So talking about the European context, that's a very interesting topic because Europe cannot be seen as a uniform environment. Of course, it depends very much on the business. There are businesses which are much more global than other businesses. But overall, you can see that there are big differences between the regions in Europe and sometimes also differences really country by country. And here I'm thinking about, the industrial logic, which might be very different. And it's super important to understand that complex environment and to understand the differences between the countries. I think the most complex country for a non-European leader is Germany. And it starts also with the fact that Germany is a federation by itself. So very often we talk about Germany as one entity, but people forget that these are 16 different countries, actually. And very often we have differences in between the countries by themselves. Another thing is that in Germany, we have something which we called Deutschland AG. It's Germany as a company, Germany as an ecosystem of regulation, of associations, which are very deeply rooted in the soul of the German people. So these associations, which are trade associations, interest associations, some of them have roots in the Middle Age. So it's not something which we are talking about, the last 20 years or after the Second World War. This is something which really is in the tradition of the German people. So understanding that Germany AG, it's very important if you have a business in Germany, if you want to operate in Germany. But then, of course, also other countries have their particularities. Very much it comes on regulation, even if we have now internal market and we go more and more in streamlining the regulation and trying to be more uniform and more aligned in everything. We still have differences which you can see, for instance, in the business model, in the go-to-market. So it's important to understand those particularities. Yes, this complexity can be a competitive advantage. And I think it's important in the context of the board, especially if we talk about the board of companies which are non-European companies and are expanding into Europe, to understand that reality and how to transform something which might be seen as a bureaucracy in a competitive advantage. Because the entry barrier, due to that complex mosaic of ecosystems and rules and way of doing the business, is keeping a lot of competitors outside. So it is proven that during, let's say after the Second World War, we were able in Europe to keep a more, let's say, stringent entry barrier when it comes especially on low-cost, low-entry products into Europe. I think it's not different in the board room compared to strategic decisions taken at a global level in a global company, which do not go in the depths of the reality of a region. Now we talk about Europe, but it might be the same thing also when we talk about the other regions. For me, it's very important that when you take a decision which is impacting a region, what do we want to do there, how we want to expand, or we want to divest, depending on what decision we want to do in the board related to that region, that we really understand the local reality, that we have people either own board members or then that we take consultancy from outside. It's important to be aware that there might be a blind spot, to be able to articulate, to identify that possible blind spot, and then to act accordingly, which means getting the information which you need on that particular environment to be able to do the best decision. It's common known, I would say, over the last years, 20 years, that we were lacking when it comes to innovation. So there are a lot of opinions that somehow the regulation it's a hinder when it comes to innovation, especially when we talk about the digital innovation. Now we talk about AI, which Europe is very early to regulate, just to take it as an example. Other regions might let it go, easily or more easy than what Europe is trying to do, with good arguments on both sides. But when it comes to innovation, I think we have to be very careful not to overregulate, especially the new technologies, before they get to a very mature stage, because that could be a hinder in innovation. If we take the more mature technologies, there we have seen what I said before, that having some time of having a clear regulatory framework, it was actually positive for the innovation. And I'm thinking about the harmonized standards. Having harmonized standards in Europe in the mature technology was a benefit for the European companies, how they developed, how they were leading the standardization work. And for decades, the European standards became global standards. So it's both ways. We have to be very careful. Again, standardization, I think it's very beneficial, and harmonized standards are very important. Over-regulating, especially the new technologies, I think it's risky, and here we have to be very careful not to lose competitiveness.